You ever notice that? How some things just have this magnetic pull on us? It's a weird kind of gravity, and it gets like 1,000 times stronger the second someone tells us we can't have it. And you know this quote from G.K. Chesterton, man, it just hits the nail on the head. That's exactly what we're digging into here. This strange, powerful, and let's be honest, sometimes totally irrational part of our brains that wants something so much more the minute it starts to slip away. All right, so to really get this, let me tell you a quick story from our source, Robert Cialdini. So he lived near this Mormon temple in Mesa, Arizona. He'd see it, thought it looked nice, but, he never really felt the urge to go inside. And then, one day, he reads in the paper that a super restricted section, a part that's normally off limits to anyone who isn't a member, was going to be open to the public, but only for a few days. All of a sudden, he was desperate to go. And here's the crazy part, right? Nothing about the temple itself had changed. He wasn't suddenly more interested in Mormonism or architecture or anything like that. The only thing that was different was that his chance to see it was about to disappear. And that experience, right there, is a perfect window into this powerful mental shortcut our brains take. It's called the Scarcity Principle. So, what is the engine driving this thing? What's going on in our heads? Let's peel back the layers and see what's really happening psychologically when we're faced with something rare or dwindling. Okay, so here's the official definition. At its core, the scarcity principle says that opportunities just seem more valuable to us when they're limited. And the first reason this is so powerful is, well, it's a pretty decent mental shortcut most of the time. Think about it. In life, things that are hard to get, diamonds, a really tough skill, they're usually more valuable. Our brain just kind of learns that rule and starts applying it to, well, everything. But that's just the start. There's a much, much stronger force at play here. It's called loss aversion. Basically, we humans are way more motivated by the fear of losing something than we are by the idea of gaining something of the exact same value. It's wild. They've done studies. You're more likely to insulate your house if someone tells you how much money you're losing every day, not how much you could save. It's the same with health. A pamphlet is way more effective if it talks about the health you could lose. So, see, it's not just about an item seeming more valuable. When something becomes scarce, it feels like an attack on our freedom, and our brains do not like that. It triggers this thing psychologists call reactance. The second a choice is limited or taken away, our gut reaction is to fight back. We want that forbidden thing even more, almost just to prove that we still can have it. And this feeling, it hits a fever pitch at two very specific times in our lives. First up, the terrible twos. Seriously, in one study, they put toddlers in a room with a couple of toys. Which one did they almost always go for? The one they put behind a clear barrier. The obstacle itself was what made it so appealing. Then, boom, it comes roaring back during the teenage years. You've heard of the Romeo and Juliet effect, right? Researchers found that the more parents tried to break up a teenage couple, the more in love that couple felt. It's the exact same principle at work. Okay, so we've got this powerful, built-in instinct to resist being controlled. But what happens when you throw a couple of specific situations into the mix? Well, that's when scarcity goes from being a little nudge to a full-on, irresistible tidal wave. There are two conditions in particular that just pour gasoline on this fire. All right, check out this classic study. It shows the first condition perfectly. They call people in to rate a chocolate chip cookie. Simple, right? Some people got a cookie from a jar that was packed with 10 of them. Others got a cookie from a jar that only had 2. And just like you'd guess, the people who got the cookie from the almost empty jar rated it higher. But here's where it gets really interesting. A third group came in, saw a full jar of 10 cookies, and then the experimenter took it away and replaced it with a jar that only had 2. Those cookies, the ones that became newly scarce right in front of their eyes, were rated the highest of all. We want things so much more when we see them actively disappearing. But wait, there was one last, absolutely brilliant twist. For some of those people, the reason the cookies became scarce was just a mistake. But for the others, the jar was taken away because the experimenter said they needed the cookies for other participants. So what happened? The cookies that became scarce because of social demand, because other people wanted them, blew everything else out of the water. They were rated as the most desirable, period. There is nothing that makes us want something more than seeing a crowd of people trying to get it too. And this mix of scarcity plus rivalry, man, it can drive people to a state of temporary madness. Back in the 70s, the TV networks got into this insane bidding war for the movie rights to the Poseidon Adventure. And Robert Wood, who was the president of CBS, he later said he just got caught up in this feeding frenzy. He knew he was bidding way more than the movie was worth, but he couldn't stop. And the craziest part? When he finally lost the auction, he didn't feel disappointed. He felt relief. That's the feeling of your logical brain getting completely steamrolled by that primal urge to win the scarce prize. So once you understand the psychology, you start seeing it everywhere. You realize how this principle is basically weaponized against us every single day. And understanding these tactics, it's not just some interesting psychological tidbit. It's pretty much essential for protecting your wallet and, honestly, your sanity. I mean, you've seen this a million times, right? Only 3 left in stock when you're booking a flight. That's the limited number tactic. Those endless emails screaming, "Flash sale ends at midnight," that's the deadline tactic. They all tap into that deep-seated fear of missing out, that FOMO, to get us to buy now and think about it later. And here's how they can get really sophisticated with it, like in a classic boiler room scam. First, they dangle the carrot. They tell you about some can't-miss hot stock. Then, just as you're getting interested, they snatch it away. "Oh, sorry, it's all sold out." But then they call you back, maybe they're even pretending to be out of breath, saying, "Hey, someone just dropped out, you've got one last chance to get in." It's all a performance, a carefully crafted play designed to create panic and rivalry to trick you into making a terrible decision. Okay, so this is some seriously powerful manipulative stuff. So the big question is, how do we fight back? How do we get our logical brain back in the driver's seat when our emotions are being hijacked by a ticking clock? The defense is actually a pretty simple 2-step process. The first step is just to recognize the feeling. You know that rush, the agitation, the panic, the way your heart starts beating a little faster when you see that countdown timer on your shopping cart? That physical feeling, that is your alarm bell. It's a giant red flag telling you to just stop, take a breath, step away from the buy now button before you do anything. All right, so once you've calmed down, you ask yourself the single most important question. Why do I want this thing? Am I feeling this pull because of its function, what it's actually going to do for me, or am I just getting swept up in the thrill of possession, the idea of owning this rare thing that other people want but can't have? And this is the key insight that's going to save you. Scarcity tricks our brains into thinking the item itself will be better. But remember the cookie study? The scarce cookies were more desirable, but they didn't magically taste any better. A used car that 3 people are fighting over isn't going to drive any better. Scarcity only amps up the emotional value of owning it, not the practical value of using it. And knowing that difference, that's your superpower. This principle is absolutely everywhere. Concert tickets, online shopping, limited edition sneakers, you name it. So the question really isn't if you're going to see it again. The real question is, now that you know the trick, where are you going to spot it next?